Hello and welcome to the video commentary for Goblin, issue 10B. I am Solomon Mars, creator of Goblin, volume 1 in the 555 saga. Again, with me is special guest commentator L.D. Walker.
Yeah, I got taken out in the last commentary for 10A, so I'm here to make up for that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was sad. The laptop died over there, so this time I have it plugged up, so there'll be none of that.
Then when I tried to get back in touch with another call, my power went out.
Oh,
There was a power outage here, so.
Yeah. So this time, hopefully, everything will go smoothly all the way through. Hopefully, but all right. So let's just jump right into this. I don't even want to talk about this cover because. You know, the circumstances for this cover, you know, it was just kind of a last minute cover. I like the colors, but, I don't know. I don't know.
Jumping right in, huh?
Yes. Back alley scenes, people running around back alleys. I do like the visual of Jeff and Rockeater running together. It's kind of a cool pic.
Yeah, that's nice.
Oh man, why is it? Mine's not changing. Oh, there we go. Okay, I'm like all the way over at 91 now, and then just I get with her, she knows like all of the secret passages and everything, that pretty much almost all the secret passages in the castle. I mean, she constantly is helping with the repairs and everything. I mean, it's a really run down place, so they're constantly having to repair. So I mean, you know, of course she would know some places, maybe even created some of these places herself. I don't know. Did you have any? Oh yeah, you know what? I know it's kind of slightly off topic of what we're seeing. I'm trying to think. I don't know if you wanted to mention, or you said that you had a question about 26.
About 26?
Yeah.
We'll hold on to that because I just had a thought come up.
Oh, okay. Well, I know it'll come up. You know, he'll come up. You know, a little bit further on into this issue. But okay, I just wanted to see if you still wanted to talk about that or not, but yeah. I really don't know. I don't have a lot to say about any of this other than, you know, I just enjoyed working on the different colors and the different textures and stuff. You know, I was so happy to be able to use CS3 again and use my texture packs. I don't know. I mean, that's like the whole Red Castle was about using these texture packs and stuff in order to really get across how it looked. You know, sort of run down and, you know, kind of peely, kind of rusty, and I don't know.
I was thinking about, I don't know if it was a subconscious thing or whatnot, but how the Rockeater has all these secret passages around, like a rabbit actually would. Like she's got
wow.
the alternative escape plan.
I never even thought about that. That's hilarious. Wow. Yeah, I never thought about that. It's very possible that was unconscious. Yeah. Wow. Huh.
That's one of those things that dawns on you when you really sit back and look at it.
Yeah. Wow. We actually have a couple of rabbits that play around in the backyard, which is really weird. You know, to be able to look out the window and see rabbits in your yard. They live somewhere near. Anyways, that has absolutely nothing to do with her. And, you know, but yeah, trying to think. You know, I guess I could just talk about like the fact that she in this part of the story, I'm actually having her kind of explain the situation with Sune and Sapphire and stuff, and even 26 to some degree. And how, you know, well, she calls it Discordian logic, but, you know, that's chaos, you know, chaos logic. and how it can consume you and just kind of make you, drive you mad and stuff. And this is kind of her sort of reprimanding Jeff, just kind of getting on him, for mostly what she thinks is going on. They're just kind of going back and forth, and really, she's concerned about the relationship between he and Sank, and what the scars on his wrist possibly mean, being incantations, and what that might mean, which is what she was kind of discussing a little bit with Amy while still trying to figure out what Amy was about, and just this whole section of the book was just showing, kind of telling a little bit of the backstory of Jeff and his relationship with his grandmother, and prior to him leaving a year ago, and just slightly his reasoning for leaving, which was, he was so I really don't want to say desperate, but he really wanted to get to the Crimson King and actually take revenge, and so he wanted to rush the entire process, and Jeff wants to learn really advanced stuff. He just kind of wants to skip along, skip through and be as strong as possible immediately, he's kind of wanted it the whole time, and I wanted to sort of talk about his parents without actually doing any flashbacks or really directly talking about them, but sort of slowly creeping into the origins of Jeff, and the fact that the Rock Eater, taught his father logic, and the whole time he's been trying to sort of do the things that his father could do, so that he wants to be, as strong as him, so that he can kind of seek out revenge. And the Rock Eater the whole time is trying to explain to him that shouldn't be his sole reason for understanding logic, to learn it, and seeing that kind of the reason that's almost like his reasoning for sort of pretty much failing from the jump, is that was his initial intent, and that's kind of me slowly just kind of slowly revealing little bits and pieces as to all, maybe Jeff's been making a lot of mistakes up to the point when he left. Maybe there were some other things going on, and I actually did make a mistake in this one page. I don't even know what page this is, where they're at the edge talking, and she says books of enlightenment, and I always forget to use the exact term that I created, which is really not that different from the word book, but it's boka, and I always forget to use it. I think I've used it once in all the times that someone said book of enlightenment. But I mean, she reminded him, I mean, that he was her apprentice before Reduha was, and that he has the same access that Reduha has, and even his own father had, and I mean, to an entire, her entire library and all this stuff. And he could have gone, if knowledge is really what he wanted, he could have actually taken his own time and gone and dug around in all this stuff and learned on his own, and instead of sitting around waiting for her to teach him, because part of life and just being a logic smith is also you have to have some you have to kind of be I don't want to say a self-starter, but you have to have some initiative, and you have to want to actually do some things on your own, as well as, having someone else teach you things, be self-motivated. Yeah, that's
have your own kind of discipline about it.
Yeah. And she just kind of was telling him that, the whole time he just neglected all of that entire fact. And it just felt kind of, you could tell he was kind of feeling bad, but more angry at the fact that she would point it out now instead of telling him then. But that just kind of plays more into Jeff's sort of juvenile nature, and I don't like that picture. I don't like the positioning of her ears. I messed up on that picture, which is funny, that this far in, and I'm still getting used to the character. Oh, what is that? Oh, page 100. I wasn't sure where you were at.
It was on like 97.
Oh, yeah.
I'm with you.
But yeah, and then she's basically at this point sort of directly speaking on what she is thinking about, instead of kind of dancing around it a little, and she's directly talking about the wristbands and the scars underneath the wristband, and well, of course, Jeff, just being Jeff, even to his grandmother, he's still Jeff, still a bit of a jerk. Aww. But it's just kind of, and he's, that whole "you don't know me" and you don't know what this is about, and that whole thing.
Upturned mouth.
Huh? Yeah. And I want it to definitely not be quite as simple as all that. I mean, of course, things will play out eventually, and all will be revealed. But I didn't want the most simplest solution to be the final solution. I guess that's not really that simple of a solution. I mean, for him, that it's sort of a shortcut to use this sort of logic and incantations on yourself. That is considered sort of a shortcut to enlightenment, and he's trying to get her to realize that that's not what it's about, and she wants to know what it's really about, and he doesn't have time, 4. There's not a lot to say about any of these. I just mostly like the colors and things. There wasn't really a lot going on behind the scenes beyond just remembering conflicts with my mom, and even with my own grandmother, when I was growing up, and just kind of using that as a basis for Jeff and his conversation that he's having, well, more so an argument that he's having right now. Using real life, to actually create a better storytelling. Yeah, and Sankofa not really being completely interested in what was going on, but kind of just being quiet and sitting back and watching things play out. I purposely made him not get involved because he doesn't know the Rock Eater at all. So it's more so an interesting thing, considering he met Jeff and he spent an entire year with Jeff, and if all you know is just Jeff, and you have the chance to meet his family, it's just like, I wonder what his family is like if this is how this kid is, So it's just one of those things, but Jeff's behavior it doesn't mean that his entire family would be just like him, which is kind of the case, So anyways, so here we are, 106, the beginning of the showdown between Reduha and and 26.
Yeah, about 26. Well, now that his staff is gone,
Uh-huh.
I wanted to ask, and I was wondering why his staff was, if it was intentional or not, whether his staff was shaped like a baseball bat.
Oh, ooh. Was it you're asking if it was intentional?
Yeah.
Yes, but how to explain? I slightly talked about it in previous commentary, but only in the sense that 26 and Sune are alternate. Their original design was based on sort of alternate universe versions of two other characters from a different series. And I was just designing characters, and I thought it would be fun to design other versions of those characters. They don't act like those characters at all, but those two characters had changed, and had so many different style changes, from the time that I was in high school to to like college, that there were like outfits and designs that I no longer use, and I was like, well, I like those designs. I like them. They were really solid. So I kind of gave them to Sune and 26, and one of the design elements was this baseball bat. The main character carries around a spiked bat, and I didn't want to use that for this because that particular character's that's his thing. That's his thing, that bat. But when these characters became a part of the Goblin universe 100% and not just, maybe kind of things, I looked at the bat and I said, well, I'll keep it. I can use it. And so then I started, creating his entire backstory and how all of that played in. And that's really the reason why it looks like a bat, I mean, I just decided to leave it like that. I mean, I mentioned before that there's no such thing as baseball on Aravana, but
yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, it's completely just a visual thing, I mean, it's not actually a baseball bat. It's just a short staff, and I had to, in order to put myself at ease, I had to do research and make sure that I could claim a baseball bat as a staff. And, sure enough, if you go and you look around enough, a baseball bat is considered a staff, a short staff. And I was like, oh, okay, yay! Yay! So, I just went ahead with it even more. But, it's really just kind of a leftover of, design changes over like the last few years and things like that, and not wanting to take away too much. And yeah, I'll have to I'll introduce everybody to the other versions of those characters at some point. Yeah.
That was quite the answer.
Well, I just didn't want to talk too much about a whole different non-Goblin story, but yeah. I guess it could have been. It could have looked like anything, I suppose. But yeah, I thought it was interesting that it looked like that. I don't know. Let me see. There's not a. I feel really bad because there's not a lot.
What panel number are you on now?
I am on 109, but I was...
the Vulcan Death Tap.
Yeah, I was just, kind of moving through. Yeah, he's just applying poison, essentially, throughout this whole thing. Whenever he can actually touch 26, because 26 is actually, he's fast and aware enough that he was mostly keeping Raduha from touching him. Um, and of course, Reduha is he's not slow himself, but you know.
Have you talked much about Reduha's floating ears?
His floating. Well, no, I didn't know. I mean, it's one of those things I don't think about. I mean, they're not super significant. I mean, it's just the way that I draw him. Draw the character in his ears. Does his ears bother you because they float?
I mean, I was reading it and suddenly his ears just started floating. I was like,
yeah.
How about that?
It was just design, like I was getting, that's like a sign that I was getting more and more comfortable with the character as I was going, like based on his original design, I was trying to stick to it, and I just realized that he doesn't have his scar across his nose in that picture. Really weird. Huh. But the more I was drawing him, the more he was starting to actually land on model. And then after that, I started getting really comfortable with him, and he started changing a little bit more to where, just sort of hand movements that are easier for me and stuff. And just, I was just having fun at this point. Huh?
Yeah, evolution.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was just having fun by this point. And so his ears floating, there's nothing really to it other than I was in the middle of a flow, and just drawing, and that's just how his ears land, against the character, not necessarily landing. I think sometimes maybe they're attached, but usually they're probably floating.
Yeah, because they were attached, and I believe it was like a couple issues ago when it happened.
Yeah. He was really weird looking back then, though. Of course, so was the Rock Eater, and I actually talked about how I consciously made the decision not to make her as rabbit looking, as I started off. I wanted to make her really sort of tall and sort of aerodynamic and stuff, and just I wanted to look like she was sort of regal, and her face just sort of it rejected the shape of her body, the shape of her head initially. So I just kind of changed everything so she was more almost like a pipe all the way up.
Yeah. I mean, that regalness comes across.
Yeah. Let me think. Let's see. Where am I? Like 112 when 26 finally realizes he's poison has been introduced to his body. Yeah. It's kind of messing with his muscles and stuff. And it's just kind of like this whole section is sort of dealing with the arrogance of both of these characters. And really, both of them feeling like they can't be touched, and both of them sort of realizing that they have limitations and stuff. But yeah, definitely. I mean, I didn't want Reduha to come off as a jerk in any way. I definitely didn't want him to seem like Jeff. Not that Jeff is, well, I do say Jeff is a jerk, but he's a lovable jerk. But I wanted Reduha to sort of come off as not really confident, but well, yeah, a bit confident. It's really hard to find the right words to explain what I was going for with him. I mean, he's sort of a regular guy.
Yeah, he seemed like the regular nice guy at first.
Yeah, but he knows
he can hold his own.
Yeah, he knows that he has these skills and stuff, and the only thing about like the fight between he and 26 is he underestimated 26 initially, and he doesn't read people as well as say the Rock Eater does. Otherwise, he would have known not to necessarily, to confront him in this way. And it really shows in this one page where he's sort of being like the Rock Eater, where he's giving them a choice to, stop chasing after Amy and Moo Moo, and he says that he tells them that he'll give him an antidote. And it's really, it kind of shows like his character where he really underestimated 26, and it shows that even though he's a few years older than Jeff, he himself is still young enough that he also, like Sune, 26, and Sapphire, lets that adrenaline rush really go to his head, and lets the high get to him, and gets caught up in all of this stuff, that comes with being a logic smith. It's exciting. I guess it would be exciting. But he really underestimated 26, really. Not a whole lot. I'm not really making 26. He's not like a doombringer or anything, but he's formidable, especially for Reduha. So, yeah, and I went for I'm at the part where he tells him his full name.
That name, I was like, wow, really?
Tuano Sisjin.
You got it, man.
That's all it is. It's Tuano Sisjin, and it's the reason why they call him 26 is because his name looks like 26. Tuano Sisjin, and his father's name is Savano Sisjin, 76. That's all it is. But I was going for one of those things, of like samurai on the battlefield. This is actually, I mentioned this I think in the issue 2 commentary. Like the like samurai on the battlefield, they would announce their entire lineage. Like the top tier, like the generals and things like that. They would,
like the general goes up against like the new guy on the field, and they're like, "What's your name, kid?"
Yeah, and so they tell them their entire lineage and why it is so important that you are facing off against them and stuff like that. And so that's kind of what he was doing here. Kind of giving him his pedigree and stuff, and kind of explaining to him that you're underestimating me. I have a heritage that you may want to rethink what's going on, and just the word Platinus clan, it sets off both Amy and Reduha, and kind of I like that he's actually kind of smiling. After they say that, he's kind of smiling about it, and it's like, yeah, they know. This was actually the part where originally I had him talking about the fact that he was blind, and the whole procedure that that the Platinus clan goes through, where they're introduced to all the different poisons, the toxins and venoms and all those things. At some point in his life, it actually rendered him blind. That's not something that happens normally, and so he had to work twice as hard to retain his father's respect and the entire clan's respect. It's a little bit of a spoiler, but not really. Yeah. I mean, that's just kind of that's kind of the whole thing behind him acting the way he does is he feels that he has to work twice as hard because he is blind, and so he's kind of seen as helpless, and he wants to not be helpless. So he has something to prove. And it just kind of makes him, it makes him out of character. And the whole bloodletting thing, which I guess it kind of explains it in the actual dialogue, what he was doing, changing the shape of the blade that he was holding through the blood. He was actually able to change it the same way that he was able to produce them from his hands. He can change them too. It's a really unique logic ability. Are you still there?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
I was just listening.
I couldn't hear. I couldn't hear anything anymore. But anyways, but yeah, it's kind of unique to his specific clan, and just their entire heritage, specific to them for with logic and stuff, and some of these things that they can do. And I don't know. wanted to go into it a little bit more, but it's not exactly necessary right now. I know I keep saying it through all of these, but there's plenty of time to really get into a lot of these sort of extra elements of logic and the way they work with all these different characters' lives. I mean, there's an entire series for exploration. So I don't want to shove it all into, like just this little section. And, I don't know.
This scene made me wonder how much poison Reduha could actually take.
Oh, the one, yeah. That is a really good question. Probably more than Jeff could, to be honest. Probably more than Jeff, but Reduha obviously has been studying. He's definitely been studying longer than Jeff. I mean, he's a little older, and even though he's only been a student of the Rock Eater as long as Jeff has been gone, he was studying logic before being the Rock Eater's apprentice. And so, he's built up a bit of an immunity. He understands poisons and things like that, but he's oh man. He can take a little bit, but probably not as much as 26 and not as much as the Rock Eater probably could. But yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I really wanted this whole thing to be really action-packed, and I have the hardest time thinking up action sequences and just kind of choreographing that without it always looking the same, That's like one of my biggest challenges as far as telling stories in comics is sort of new ways to depict kind of the same thing happening over and over, really, because really it's just another fight, really, between just a couple of logic smiths, and it's like, well, you have to be kind of inventive, and sure, the fight in reality, you would think, well, they're different characters. These two are different characters than, say, Sune and Jeff fighting, so of course this fight would play out differently. Yeah, in reality it would, but how do you depict that reality? What would really make that fight different? And thinking about it sometimes I just burn out, and I can't really come up with how it would be that different. Truly unique ways to make it different, other than just kind of, oh well, he's got two daggers, and oh well, he looks different and stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of that comes down to atmosphere and circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just I have a hard time, but that's one of those things that I'm working towards changing. Definitely. It shows a little bit throughout the rest of the issues after this. It shows a little bit more, but I'm still working. I figure I won't be a really good storyteller until to the point where I really want to be now, until I'm like 50, 55, where I feel that I'm a master storyteller.
You said that, I was like, it's 80 years from now.
It feels like it is. It feels like it will be. I mean, it feels like it's so far away, but I know, yeah, it'll show up before I know it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what page this is. I'm on the page where Amy actually opens up the hatch.
Pulling on it, like she's saying she's got it open.
Yeah, I just like this picture. I like Amy, like her shape. I like the fact that her entire figure is in the frame. I don't know, there was something about that. I was like, oh yes, I got her to completely fit in there, and I didn't cut anything off, and you can see everything. It's like,
you got 3 levels too.
Yeah, I was really happy with it. I wanted it to maybe look a little bit more full, but I was kind of happy with this end result. Yeah. I was kind of laughing at Amy and her mouth. I don't know why I felt it necessary to show, her lips from that angle. It's kind of funny. She looks like she's making a smoochy face. But I don't know.
Like those lips that those Tamagotchi toys had.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like Raduhog, pretty much just kind of racing off to, I guess, really sacrifice himself so that Amy can get away, which is...
Yeah, I like his line of action there.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's an interesting pose. I don't know where that came from there. I seriously, it surprised me when I colored it and I looked at it and I was like, wow, I don't think I've drawn anything like that up to this point.
That would make a good figure, actually.
Yeah?
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow. There's patched together. Huh. I'll think about that. And then switch up, 125. And, just more playing up of the relationship between Jeff and Rock Eater. And, showing... I really wanted... Not so intensely, but I definitely wanted to sort of really instill it that, like, Jeff is... He's a little kid. He's a little kid. Sometimes he really thinks like a little kid, and and he's really impatient and things like that. And there's just a lot of that going on, and just him being completely impatient. It's actually kind of ridiculous because he knows why they're there, and he's just being this way because it's his grandmother. He's a jerk. Aw. I don't know what's up with that face. At 127 and 128. I just like that face. He's I think a lot of it was kind of influenced sort of unconsciously, subconsciously by Katsuhiro Otomo's Akira, and the way that a lot of the guys there, they acted in the beginning of the story. Like, if you've ever read the manga, the way that they were acting in the beginning, they were just so, I don't care, and they're just very, very all about themselves and what's happening at the moment, and, they're, always, the hormones and adrenaline are always running, and that's what sort of dictates the events of the day. Yeah, and you just kind of see them grow over time, and I just like that, like Kaneda, his character, and I see a lot of that in Jeff. Sometimes, sometimes I do, and he just reminds me of that sometimes. Makes me think about that. I think I'm only talking about Akira because I actually have been reading through them again over the last few days. Yeah. Yeah. But, we have to kind of head off into action because something is going on in Gutstown, up above them. Yeah. So...
You almost hear that guy shouting fire in like this country accent. Fire! Fire!
Oh, yeah. I'm really upset at the my depiction of the shanty town here, of Gutstown in this picture. I just was really not into it at this point. And that is a problem, sometimes, like pushing yourself. I always say, I always say it to other people, but sometimes I forget it myself. You don't want to push yourself too hard to, like if you're working on something and working on something and working on something, and even if you're like, okay, well, I have to get this done, sometimes it's good to walk away from something. Otherwise, you're gonna not put your all into it. And I feel like I didn't walk away from this picture in time because this is not how I wanted to depict this town exactly. It just doesn't look full enough for me, and it doesn't look quite the way that I depicted it in the beginning. You know, the first time you see it, it looks. I think it looks better personally. And
it has a little more sprawl to it.
Yeah, and this time it's just kind of like, what is this? But I did also redo this picture quite a few times before I landed on this one, and I was just like, okay, whatever. I had one that was further up and further back. It was almost like a bird's eye view of the whole area, and I was like, wow, that's too much. I don't want to draw that. So I landed on this one, but I did have some fun. I tried my best to sort of disguise a lot of this picture with all the fire and the smoke and stuff that's going on in the background. That was my way of sort of giving a little bit of love to a picture that I didn't really like. But in doing that, I kind of learned, I found an interesting way to sort of do the fire technique and make it look sort of bright and sort of punchy, and I like the little embers that are kind of fluttering around and stuff in the air. Those are fun.
Yeah, those embers, if you leave them out, it just doesn't work unless you throw them in there.
Yeah. It's just a reality. I mean, it's something that I think a lot of people don't really think about, but it's one of those details that I just remembered, actually sitting around, believe it or not, a drum circle. Because two of my friends used to live on a vegetarian vegan commune, and I would go to visit them. And it's really weird because it's really close to the city of Atlanta, where you would think that they couldn't have that kind of thing because, of the way that residential areas are set up. You would think that they couldn't have that, but there it is in the middle of this area, really close to the city. You have like a farm, and I loved it. They had fig trees and everything. But at night, they would all get together and they have a potluck, and then everyone would go outside, and there was this huge drum circle and this huge bonfire in the middle. And for like several nights, I kept going back because I just wanted to sit there and stare at this big, huge fire and watch the pieces of just like watch the embers flutter up into the sky, and because it was that big that you could just see them going forever. And it was so beautiful. It just makes me sound like such a pyromaniac. But
fire does have its beauty.
Yeah. Fire is it's very beautiful, and it was especially beautiful that those nights, and that's kind of I took that memory and I was replicating what I was seeing in these embers that are just kind of passing through the scenes. I like that these people are actually fighting fires with clearly. It's the water from right underneath them. They don't need necessarily a fire department. They just kind of pull the water up. It's kind of dirty water, but whatever it takes to fight the fire. And this is actually what I was talking about. This scene where with this blaze, it's this is a bright orange page.
Really works too.
Yeah, it does. That's wow. But like you can see how some of the flames overlaying, like there's that little sliver between those pieces of wall on that one building where you can see it's really bright. That piece of flame is really bright, and when I saw that, I was like, yes, I love this. I want to keep using this technique, and just like layers of just different layers, and really just what is that? Just what are those layer filters called? I don't even know what they're called in Photoshop.
The blending modes?
Yeah, I guess that's all they are. Yeah. I don't know. Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
But they're just certain ones on top of each other, even when they're the exact same color. They just they have different. They almost create different effects, by sitting on top of each other. And I was I was just really enjoying how it was looking. And there's Sapphire's little pet, and he's fully awake now, and just blowing flames everywhere. And I just I wanted to do this sort of dichotomy, that tiny little cute thing that's really, really destructive. And just how
it's always fun to do.
Yeah, it is, and just kind of to reinforce that whole idea that what you see on the outside doesn't quite determine what is on the inside, and especially applies to like the world of sprites. With them, I mean, they're usually tiny little things. I mean, but they're very powerful. Most of them are very, very powerful, and so it's just kind of I want to sort of play with that constantly. That whole idea of don't judge a book by its cover, I guess, and I don't know, this whole thing with Sune and Sapphire walking out of the flames. I don't know. I just thought it looked cool.
I didn't think twice about it. It fits.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess they wouldn't be harmed by the flames, really. Maybe there's some degree of protection. But I just thought it looked cool, so I won't even talk about it too much. But what am I? I'm trying to think. I don't want to force talking about anything. Gosh, it's just a lot of pictures of just cool poses and stuff.
Yeah, 138.
The one where it shows Jeff and Rock Eater standing there amongst the flaming rubble.
138. Yeah, that's a nice shot.
I had fun with it.
Say something about that.
What to say?
It's like one of those showdown shots.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I have a lot of fun with it, working with all those different layers. There are so many layers on there, it's ridiculous. I honestly didn't think that it would work with all those layers. I was afraid what was going to happen to me, and like it would crash the computer or something. My poor little desktop. But yeah, I find it really interesting that I would put Jeff in front of Rock Eater, but it seems like a very Jeff thing to do.
That's his thing to do.
Yeah. It's just funny how that just kind of came out. I didn't really plan it. It just when I was drawing it, that just seemed right. For his character to be in front. Yeah. And Amy showing up. Basically, all those points lead down into one area. She would have had to have crossed through here to get down to the area where they were waiting. So it was all kind of just kind of happened this way. I kind of like this picture too, where they're putting out the fires, and you see Sune and Sapphire way off back there. I don't know. It looks interesting. Not great, but interesting. I'm more interested in the water that I'm seeing, and the movement that's applied to it. I don't know.
It's
Than
nice
anything
how you
else.
can simplify your characters down to those shapes the way that you did.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I figure at that distance though, I shouldn't put a lot of detail into them. It's all really color mostly, and then I guess there are the shapes that are in there, and really what's easiest for me to actually draw, even when they're in their detail form, it's the same exact simplification there plus little details added into it, but those are the initial shapes of those characters, you know. Um,
And it works.
yeah.
That's something I have to practice more.
Uh, yeah, well, it's something, you know, all artists should practice. I mean, I have to work on it more myself so that I can really get a grasp of all the characters, you know, so they don't morph too much, you know, and kind of go off model. Even though I don't like that term, you know, off model, on model, and, you know, staying on model and things like that. I don't like it too much because I find it kind of restrictive, and I like just kind of being able to have fun with a design. Sometimes it can come back to bite you in the butt, and it did a lot in early issues. But I'm trying to think. Well, there's so much not to talk about that's going on in here. Even what was going on in like during the process of creating, there wasn't a lot going on except for the fact that by this issue I was in a very good place. I was in a good mood, and I was just going through the book, you know, drawing and coloring, and I had my my entire production process kind of almost down to a science, you know, like, you know, to where, you know, I knew, you know, this many days to work on roughs and do cleanups, scan, and then this many days or this many hours to work on color, and I knew how long it would take to work on, you know, each page, and you know, and how long to, you know, like when I hit a certain amount of time, that's when you have to leave that page alone, walk away from it, you know, that kind of thing. And I think I've actually mentioned that to you before. LD.
Yeah, when you told me how long it took or how many days that you had scheduled that you could finish an issue in, I was like, wow.
Well, I mean, there's not a lot to them. I mean, I purposely decided, you know, a long time ago that one of the ways to get through the issues within that 2 week period was to not apply so much, you know, so many backgrounds, to let color sort of create a mood, and to and it was actually something that I took from, you know, my older self-publishing days, and just talking to other, you know, like really, you know, older comic book artists, you know, like professional, I guess, you know, what is professional? But, you know, I mean, like guys who had been working in the industry for, you know, like by now decades, and talking about, you know, not always having a you know, backgrounds in every single panel that you do, and to actually have, you know, to use color, and or if it's black and white, to, you know, not have color, or use black, but to occasionally have a background image that sort of reminds the reader where they are, you know, or if suddenly things should change, you know, like if the characters move a little bit further around a setting, then you remind the reader again, well, this is where we are now. And then for the next couple of panels, nothing. There's no background, you know. That way they're focused more on this primary thing, which is the characters and the dialogue and what's actually happening, and not sort of wandering off into the background and being distracted by all the extra prettiness, you know, that's going on.
That's a really good way to meter it out.
Yeah. And that is why it's really good to go to conventions, to talk to other guys and learn things. That's definitely what I learned. You know, picking the brains of people that have come before you, you know, is good. You know, I still do it. You know, I still want it. Yeah. You learn from those guys because you don't see it. You know, when you just sit down and you read a comic, you don't think that that's what's going on. But when you sit down with them at a convention and they start talking, and you're just standing there at their table, and they're flipping through the book, and you're like, oh, really? Oh, man, I didn't even realize that. Or when they critique your work, which is how I would get a lot of information. I would actually open up my portfolio and ask them about stuff, and they would just kind of look through, and they'd be like, okay, this, and this, and they start, you know, not really tearing it apart, but showing me, you know, how young my approach to comics was at the time, you know, and so it really helped me grow. You know, it's not enough to just emulate what already exists there, but to know why it is that way, you know, and yeah. All right, I've talked enough about that. And ooh, the transformation of Lemur and I cannot remember their names anymore. It doesn't matter. I think I only mentioned their names like once. Yeah. And then a little transformation here, which is, I don't know, I wanted to make it far more impactful than it actually is. I wanted to have more of an impact than it actually did, but I realized that I knew I wasn't going to spend a lot of time on those characters, the sprites, and so I decided, you know, okay, well, yeah, we'll definitely show their transformation, and, you know, but we're not. I already knew that I wasn't going to concentrate a lot of time on how awesome they may or may not be.
You don't want to pump them up too much.
Yeah, I didn't, but I definitely wanted to show that there was more to them than what was already being given, and I just thought I would do it through, you know, like these weird close-up shots of different parts, because I just wanted a slow reveal, and then, you know, a final shot of them standing side by side. These very strange animals, these sprites that are different than pretty much every other sprite that's been introduced, you know, so far in the story. You know, you have like different types of sprites. Technically, Sankofa is a sprite. You have that sort of water droplet shaped sprite, and that's what. Now I really wish I remembered their names. I want to say Lemur, the green one. But that's the shape that he sort of takes, you know, and I think I mentioned this at some other point in a different commentary, that sort of universal, consistent, you know, there's sort of a universal shape to a lot of the different families of sprites, and in his normal form is that sort of water droplet form like he shares with Sankofa, and like some of the sprites in earlier issues, like issue 1 and issue 2. Some of those had sort of that potato, pear, water droplet shape, and then you have like the Doki, you know, like Dolclot, and those sort of take on that jalapeno pepper shape, you know. You know, and then there are far more complex shapes than that, and, you know, we'll get into that as issues go on. And I mean, and just this other one, it shows that they take on various shapes. I mean, he has like a sort of cat-like kitten shape, you know, depending on which version. You know, he's a kitten in his smaller form, sort of looks like a kitten puppy sort of thing, and then he has this bigger form, which is sort of cat, deer, something. I don't know. I just draw. I don't really, you know, worry about the, you know, what it looks like or anything. I just, you know, that's fun. That's great. Yeah, I like that. You know, and then call it a day. And yeah, he was a design company. You know, who, I mean, his design was came just a long way down. Actually, both of them did. They were just created. Actually, before Sune was created, you know, and 26, they were created, their designs, and then, I mean, it was like, we're talking like weeks, just a few weeks between the creation of these characters. But, I mean, probably the closest creation was Sethire. Her character didn't exist at first. When I created Sune and 26, Sethire wasn't a part of them. She wasn't one of them, and she didn't exist as a character, and, I mean, her creation is... she's relatively new, as far as
she seems like she had the most thought time.
Really?
Yeah,
nope.
Incubation time.
Nope. Nope. Those guys have been on sitting on paper collecting dust for Oh, more than 5 years. Sapphire, maybe 3, maybe 2. She's really young, you know, in her creation. You know, but I didn't start reworking the Red Castle story arc until not even a little bit, probably sometime before last year is when I really started reworking it so that it fit in with the rest of the continuity that I had built up, you know, because it was a completely different story. The way that it played out was completely different. Originally, the entire book started with the Red Castle story arc. The entire series started right there. And so it gave me no room to really play around with the characters at all. And
yeah,
sort of, yeah, it gave me no room to evolve the character of Jeff, introduce or evolve the character of Amy or any of that. And on top of that, it was that not first version, that version of Amy, I think the first version of Amy that you knew, which was that blank slate version, yeah, the amnesiac. And I, you know, well, you know, I mean, the evolution of that, I just totally decided, by the time she appeared in the book, I had already thrown away that whole thing and gone back to her original version. I was like, I can't deal with that. And you know, I was like, I can't introduce the Red Castle story arc in this way. I can't do any of this stuff like this. So I had to redo the whole story and kind of give them a lead in. And somewhere in that changeover early on, Sapphire kind of started, you know, finding her way perfectly in with Sune in 26, you know. That way, I mean, because can you imagine what it would have been like without her? They probably would have killed each other before they even, you know, found Mumu and Amy. You know, I mean, it's ridiculous. They would have been at each other constantly, which kind of was sort of their thing, their gag, you know. But it was unnecessary, you know. Like, you know, artists change, you know, the creation changes, things evolve over time, and that's one of those end results, you know, that I was actually talking about that time in the artist comment, you know, that, you know, things just kind of changed, you know, the whole outcome of this evolved and changed, the Red Castle arc, I mean. But yeah, okay, we've reached the end of this this comic, and wow, look at that, an hour and 4 minutes, yay! Oh, well, now it's an hour and 5 minutes. So, gosh, sorry, you know, I should have let you ask more questions on behalf of the readers and stuff, but you know,
yeah, you got on a roll there.
Yeah, I get to talking a bit, you know. Yeah, there's a lot floating around inside my head, but yeah. I guess I should wrap this up though before something horrible goes, you know, happens.
Yeah, like the power going out again.
Yeah.
I don't think that anyone can hear it over the mic, but there's definitely a storm here.
Oh my, no, but there are clouds rolling in over here too. So all right, I guess I will say thank you to all the readers, you know, and. For anyone that has picked up this and watched this commentary, thank you. I'm really hoping that you're enjoying Goblin and this commentary, all these commentaries up to this point, if you've been listening to them all, and any future ones. And I want to thank LD for stopping through again and making the commentary not so dull and you know, keeping me kind of a little focused and, you know, making it fun.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, you know, we can do this again. Yeah. If that's okay with you.
Yeah, and if anyone has any questions that they would like to drop in for future commentary,
yes,
it's always open for suggestion.
Definitely. So